Oh my god, someone's decided to trim the grass. Look at my little money plant. It's started to grow little money leaves. Isabel, if you're watching this, love it. Right, I'm sat down today for a video I've been really excited to film. This is the first of hopefully many book club videos that I'm going to film every month. I'm a very new reader. My whole life I never really read anything, and then 2020's happened and I have just gone a bit mad. Only disclaimer before I get on to this: if you're someone that wants a really intellectual analysis of these books, this is not the video for you. I didn't do English language or literature. I don't know all the words to analyse text or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you what these books made me feel, if I liked them, if I didn't like them, what I learned from them, whether I'd recommend them. So with that all said and expectations lowered, let's get on with the books. I wrote some notes as I was reading them, so if I'm looking down at my laptop, that's why. The first book I read was The Ballad of the Sand Cafe by Carson McCullers. I picked this book and the next book I read because of the Sunbeams Jess March book club. She's just crazy clever and just really cool, and she recommended these two books to read, so I did. It's a short story, it's only 70 pages long, and it kind of focuses on this main character, Miss Amelia, who's fiercely independent but also very lonely and a bit stubborn and in her own world, and she owns this store and her life is kind of going on in this very kind of monotonous, sad way. And then she meets cousin Lyman, who kind of stumbles across, who's not her cousin, or is he? I mean, if someone's read this and understands that, the whole way through the book I was like, he's called Cousin Lyman, but I'm like, are they related? Because if so, that's a bit, you know, no judging. But basically their paths cross. He's a hunchback that shows up on her porch one evening, and from there the rest of the story is all about unrequited love and the dynamic between the lover and the beloved. There was a passage in particular that I read, and I just feel like everyone, you know, if you're watching this to some degree, has experienced that emotion of unrequited love. It's such a painful one, I suppose, whether you're on either side of that situation, but this is what she describes in this passage, which I thought was rather brilliant. The value and quality of any love is determined solely by the lover himself. It is for this reason that most of us would rather love than be loved. Almost everyone wants to be the lover, and the curt truth is that, in a deep, secret way, the state of being beloved is intolerable to many. The beloved fears and hates the lover, and with the best of reasons, for the lover is forever trying to strip bare his beloved. The lover craves any possible relation with the beloved, even if this experience can cause him only pain. I'll let you decide what you thought about that, but I just thought it was so clever. So often you hear that you want someone to love you, or there's a particular person you really want to have feelings for you, but actually the truth is, being that person, there is an incredible amount of pressure. If someone's putting this vision of what love and happiness is essentially on the beloved's shoulders, on that person's shoulders, that's a huge amount to have to live up to and to be, and actually, like she said, it's quite intolerable. So we fantasize about being this person that is adored or loved, but actually we would all probably rather be the person that's pining after someone than being pined after, if that's a saying. Do you say being pined after? Probably not. But that was, yeah, probably my favourite passage in the whole book. It's not a crazy storyline, it's quite a subtle, slow novel. It's quite sad. It's set in a sad town where sad things happen and everyone knows everyone's business because they've got nothing better to do, and it's not one I'd say to all my friends they've got to read, but I will be reading more of the famous Carson McCullers books. Liked it, didn't love it, loved Carson McCullers, didn't love the story that much. Next one. The next book I read was The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. Again, it was the second of the recommended in Sunbeams Jess's Mark book club. At the time that I bought it, longlisted for the International Man Booker Prize, and it's now been shortlisted. So obviously the panel massively rate this book, and I did too. The story takes place on an island in Japan. It's a dystopian novel, which if you don't know what that means, because I didn't, had to Google it, it's basically kind of an alternative universe where there's great suffering. So books like 1984 by George Orwell, or more recently The Power by Naomi Alderman. This is a dystopia, but it's very subtle. Like if you're into really heavy stuff, this isn't it. Anyway, it's set on an island where things slowly disappear, and it's part of the way of life. People on the island know about this, and it's just part of their existence. So for example, very early on in the book, so there's no spoilers, roses disappear. And so they wake up one morning, they feel a little bit different in themselves and they don't quite know what it is, and that means to them that something has disappeared from the island. They actually say something has been disappeared. There's like a grammatical change with the way, which is done intentionally. but took me a bit of a while to get used to. So they go outside and all the roses have kind of fallen from the trees, and with this disappearance of a physical disappearance, they also forget what the point of a rose was. They don't understand why it really even existed in the first place. But there are some people on the island that do not forget, and these people are hunted by the memory police, which is obviously where this comes from. It does get quite dark, and it starts off a lot lighter with the disappearances, and as it gets further and further into the book, it's like, but I won't spoil any more of the plot. This book made me really appreciate my memories in a way that I had never really done before. It also was really interesting to see from the point of view of people that have been affected by memory loss, and the way that she writes from the point of view of the people that have forgotten what these things mean, going through their cognition of trying to look at these things and trying so desperately hard to understand, like, why did I used to care so much about this? Like, why did I? And there's just nothing there. There's no information there. I found really fascinating to read. And the fact that the main character isn't immune to these disappearances, again, not a spoiler, you know that very early on. Really liked that, because I think sometimes with these kind of dystopian films or anything like that, the main character is always a bit invincible or not affected by what's happening in that world around them, or somehow finds a way to overcome it. But she is just completely immersed in that world, and actually seeing it from that point of view as just a kind of normal person, I actually really enjoyed. There is a very subtle love story throughout the book, but it doesn't consume the narrative, which I quite like. If you're going to go into this book wanting to know why things happen, where people go with the memory police, why the memory police are there, why things disappear, this isn't that kind of book. Go into it knowing it's going to be a subtle dystopia and not full guns blazing, but beautifully written. Really liked it. Next book I read was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. I'll read you the Goodreads synopsis. Vivid, harrowing and ultimately hopeful recreation of Leil Sokolov's experience as the man who tattooed the arms of thousands of prisoners with what would become the most potent symbols of the Holocaust. The Tattooist of Auschwitz is also a testament to the endurance of love and humanity under the darkest possible circumstances. Heartbreaking and confronting, this book tells a redemptive tale of love and selflessness. This book, as you can imagine, was incredibly hard emotionally to get through. Some of the scenes and the descriptions in this book are just overwhelming, and you do find yourself completely unable to comprehend such levels of evil. Reading this book, knowing it's based on a true story, with this kind of such powerful love story through the middle of hell, was just one of the most heartbreaking but incredible stories I've ever read. So I highly recommend this. In terms of language, as my brother said, because he read it and felt the same, it's very easy to read. The language isn't hard, it's a lot of dialogue, so you will read it quite quickly. I saw a review online of someone really slating the fact that there was no depth of characters and you didn't know anything about the personalities of the main people and what differentiated them from one another, and obviously I wholly disagreed with it, because I just thought that was surely the point. We didn't know what their personalities were like because they weren't treated like people. They were given numbers, they didn't have names. Like Gita, who's Leil's love, won't tell him anything about her family, won't tell him anything, not even her last name, because it's so traumatic to even think of a life that they used to have when they're living their current existence. So I thought that was purposeful, that we didn't have a clue really about their personalities, because they weren't even allowed to have one, let alone us being able to find out one as a reader. So I disagree with that. And you read, when you read the back, which I really highly recommend, all the author's notes, that Heather Morris and Leil actually became really good friends, and I think she wrote this book over 7 years, and I think you can just tell that she really knew him in the way she writes about him. A couple of quotes from this book that I loved. To save one is to save the world. Remember the small things and the big things will work themselves out. And finally, the mantra which Leil kind of lived his life by was, if you wake up in the morning, it's a good day. And I absolutely love that. An ultimate book that I read this month was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I loved this book. Like, loved it. I think I didn't like the film, you know, the Leonardo DiCaprio film. Obviously Leo, it was a different class, but I never liked that film at all. And so when I went to the book, I was like, oh, I probably won't like the book. And then I realised I didn't really like the film because of the fact that this book only really makes sense as a book. You can be the best actor in the world, but I don't think you can act like the paragraph of text that Fitzgerald talks about when Gatsby first smiles. Like, you can try and you can be like, but you can't like recreate this genius. anyway, sidetrack. So yeah, it follows a cast of characters living in fictional towns of West Egg and East Egg on the prosperous Long Island in the summer of 1922. Yeah, so it's set in that incredible 1920s, like huge parties, glamour, and you kind of follow through the book from Nick's perspective, who lives next door to Gatsby in this tiny little house next to Gatsby's like humongous mansion. I seriously could just make a whole video talking about this book. Sorry, my camera died and it's actually way later in the day. There's no crazy storyline with this book. It's more a real in-depth analysis of certain characters. The main thing this book taught me, the main thing I took away from it, because I'm sure you could read multiple articles about how amazing the writing is and everything like that, was this whole idea of holding on to the past is far more painful than letting go. Gatsby is literally obsessed with getting a life that he doesn't have. Like, he can have all the cars he wants, he can have the biggest house, throw the biggest parties, but it means nothing to him unless one person, Daisy, if it means anything to her. If it doesn't mean anything to her, it means nothing to him. There was a line that said Gatsby was revaluing everything in his house depending on whether it caught Daisy's eye or not, which in one hand you think, oh, that's so romantic, but in another hand it's like, no, it's nothing to do with love at all. It's to do with power. Actually, it shows how fickle Gatsby is, but also shows how much his own opinion of himself just doesn't seem to matter. He needs constant validation from other people. I don't think the book's about love really, it's about money and it's about power. When I read it, that Gatsby is this new money character and Daisy and these other people he's trying to impress are old money. He can do everything he can do everything by the book, but he'll never be able to be what they are because he wasn't born into it. And it's just him, which is completely summarised in the final image that Fitzgerald creates in the end of the book. This idea that you're kind of in a boat and the current's going this way, you're furiously trying to get to the other side, that completely not where the river is flowing, and not realising that actually if you just put the oars in the boat, if you just let go and you just stop trying to chase after something that feels so tiring to get to, you'll actually just end up going through life and finding that you're where you're meant to be.
I thought you were saying that to your friend. I didn't realise you were filming a video. Does he say old spore in the book as well?
Yeah, he says old spore all the time. I can't read out loud. I can't read out loud very well. It's something I'm working on. Juicy little bit of goss. My friend Emma was saying that apparently there's like theories that Fitzgerald actually found a lot of his dialogue from his wife's diaries. Apparently she was this kind of secret writer and he took stuff. So if that's the case, just giving you a little shout out, Fitzgerald's wife. Just giving you a little shout out. Right, last but in no means least. Oh my god, is he coming back?
So sorry, you've got my laptop charger, it's down there.
Normal People by Sally Rooney. I'm sure if you're watching this you have seen the TV series as well as your auntie's dog's cousin's cat and are obsessed with it just as I am. It follows Connell and Marianne, who are two students in the west of Ireland, Sligo I believe, and they are at school together, completely different social standings in school. Connell's very cool and very socially accepted, and Marianne is the opposite. She doesn't really care at all that she's not liked, but she's fiercely independent, and they're both very, very clever. Connell's mum is the cleaner for Marianne's mum, so they kind of know each other in this secret out of school hours way. And then the rest of the book is basically their relationship through the years and how it kind of comes in, comes out and intertwines. Overall, I loved this book and I finished it in a day, which for me is really, really fast because I'm a very slow reader. So I was hooked, and you're rooting for these characters and you want them to get together, and every scene that they're in together you're just like, oh please, 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 let this be the time that you're together, please. Even though probably, if you're honest, it's not the most healthy relationship. Like, I think there's that whole idea that a healthy relationship, you're meant to complement each other, not complete each other and not complicate each other. And I think with these two characters, they complete each other. It's not a matter of complementing each other. I think they are just two souls that join together, which makes them not feel lonely because they're in it in this little cocoon. I don't think it's necessarily healthy, but at the same time you can't help but want them to be together. Everyone I've spoken to about this book have all said that it's affected them in some way, and I think there's something very magical about an author that can make you think about your own life. Yeah, I loved it and I would 100% recommend it. If anyone watching this knows what I mean, but I finished the book and was like, there's something not quite, loved it but confused. But the TV series is just, I watched it in one evening. There are 12 episodes. They're about half an hour each. I'll let you work out when I went to bed. I started watching them about 7 p.m. There was something so raw and incredibly beautiful about it, the way they filmed it, the acting was sensational. I cried and laughed. It was an emotional roller coaster. If you haven't watched it, definitely do so, just not with the parents, not with the parents. But that concludes my April books. I'll be back next month for the May books, and little cheeky spoiler, actually already read one so far in May, Conversation with Friends, and I'm now currently reading Girl, Woman, Other, so they are little 2 of the books that will be in the book review. So if they're on your shelf, then give them a read, and then we can discuss them together next month. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was something even vaguely interesting in anything that I said. I'll try to get better. I'm hoping the more I read, my vocabulary will improve. So we can only go up. Let me know what you thought about all these books. If you've read any of them, I'd love to hear all your thoughts. Stay safe, stay at home. Lots of love.